Welcome back to another exciting episode of Perpetual Cash Flow. I'm your host, Brad Bennett. Now, in previous episodes, we've talked about the challenges associated with the traditional default cash flow structure, where we have all of our new dollars that come into our world for the very first time going directly into a checking account, which is a spending account. As a result, there's tremendous pressure put on every single one of those dollars, and we wind up letting our financial freedom fall to the bottom of the food chain. And by making a couple of very simple structural changes, we move your financial freedom to the top priority. We do this by inserting what's called the cash flow reservoir. The money now goes into the cash flow reservoir. You determine how much goes to checking and you capture the excess. As the reservoir builds, you're now able to begin eliminating toxic elements that may be found inside of your financial structure. Things like credit card debt, high interest loans, variable loans. They may be things that you've purchased years ago that really aren't doing for you what they hoped they would. You don't get the use out of them or the enjoyment. And so we start to make some of those changes that now puts you in greater control. Once we've done this, you are able to now much more easily build your emergency funds. And as the emergency fund is built, we're now looking at acquiring tax advantaged cash flow engines. So the question is, what are tax advantaged cash flow engines? The list is endless. This video would never allow for me enough time to go through everything that might be a fit for every person I've ever worked with. So I'm going to go through and give a few examples. Just because it's an example doesn't mean that's necessarily something you have to do. Just because it's not on there doesn't mean you can't do it. This is just, things that I have worked with most commonly with clients that I currently have. So one of those is a business. Businesses range from construction trades to service and intellectual property. The beauty about a business is a business allows for you to make money, spend money, and pay taxes on what is left over. Unlike the left-hand side of the page, where with earned income, you make money, pay taxes, and live your life on what is remaining. Another cash flow engine could be intellectual property. Intellectual properties could be, I have friends that have built video games. I have friends that have built uh, AI, subject matter experts in their particular fields. Heck, I even had a friend of mine who wrote a book on fly fishing. The neat thing that the intellectual property allows for you to do is you've created it once and it continues to throw off a return on that asset for many years down the road. An additional tax advantaged cash flow engine that I really love is investment real estate. I personally am a fan of rentals. They're not for everybody. But some of the tax advantages that come along with investment real estate is the interest expense deduction, depreciation, 1031 exchanges, and oftentimes you're going to have a business entity that is protecting those assets as well. And so, once again, you have a business structure around it that allows for potentially additional tax advantages. Uh, for some people, they might be looking at these saying, that's just not for me. And we might be looking at creating a portfolio that is structured for cash flow. Now, most of the time, when we think about investing in the market, it's for purchasing mutual funds. But there are other assets that can be purchased, like dividend-paying stocks. There might be a REIT. There's many of different things that you can acquire in the market that provide a cash flow and as well can be tax advantaged. I have clients that are in the real estate world as agents and brokers. They have created a fund for hard money lending. And so they take that money and they lend it out to investors that are paying them a very high rate of interest to rehab the properties that they purchased, either resell or get new financing on it and keep it as a rental property. There can be leasing. I have a client that has acquired equipment and will lease it to other companies. And once those leases are up, he gets the equipment back. Typically, those lease payments have not only paid for the cost of the asset, but he's made money on it as well. He gets the asset back. He's able to rent it or lease it out again, sell it, whatever it is that he decides. Um, Additional cash flow engines can be life insurance that's properly structured. The dividends that a life insurance policy will pay on an annual basis are exempt from income taxation. In addition to that, the uh, cash buildup inside of the policy can also be leveraged to acquire additional assets. For some people, that's an appropriate use of the policy. But in addition to that is it's asset protection. A lot of times we look at it as, well, it's only protecting my living life value. But once you have retired, it takes on a completely different role. It now becomes asset insurance. You may have an estate that today falls under the taxable limits for estate taxes, but we don't know what a future administration will do. We don't know how large the asset base may become. As a result, that death benefit provides an influx of tax-free cash that can help take care of some of the things inside of your portfolio and allow for you to pass wealth generationally. Now you're beginning to create a legacy family. There's so many dynamic things that can be done with that asset that a lot of times are left off of the table, and we pass over it thinking, well, it's not that big of a deal, it's not for me. But it does keep people from achieving their maximum wealth potential when it's left off of the table. For some, they might be interested in municipal bonds. And municipal bonds on many areas are exempt from income taxation at the federal level. This can allow for that those interest payments coming in as the bond matures over a period of time. Now, the great thing about cash flow engines is that they begin to take pressure off of the paycheck. When you take pressure off of the paycheck, the savings rate increases. With the increased savings rate, more money is able to be moved over to building on or acquiring additional cash flow engines. We take more pressure off of the paycheck and we repeat the process over and over again. Every time you get a turn on the money, it grows, and the cycle begins to create tremendous cash flow momentum and greater wealth potential, allowing for you to someday sail off into the sunsets and have an asset base that feeds you on a monthly or an annual basis without having to sell the asset. Now creating generational wealth, improving the legacies that you've created and left behind. In future episodes, I'm going to have a tax professional that will talk about how some of these assets are taxed and give you some ideas as to how you can implement these into creating the wealth that you're ultimately looking for.